we are in charge of historical development, and we have two questions.
How has the role of the arts within society developed?
The role of art within society. Well, I think like many of those questions, they're very like related, so they sort of overlap. Like when we talk about culture, when we talk about society, art is gonna be like kind of like a parallel or crossing throughout all those areas of knowledge and overlapping, as I said. So like, for example, again, the protest art that I mentioned. If you guys go to the opening of the Seniors Art Show, because we don't have to only talk about famous artists. When we talk about art, we are all artists as long as we're producing an artistic piece. And if you go to the opening and the art show next week, you're going to see that there are many pieces that are protest art, because all the artworks here, they are mostly conceptual, and they carry a weight of something that's being said about society, about how the students, the artists feel about that. So it's going to be a great experience for you guys to go there afterwards and kind of try to read what the artworks are trying to say.
What does the development of art tell us about the way we perceive the world?
It tells a lot. It's interesting. For example, when I take my groups of juniors and seniors artists to Inhotim, which is the open air museum in Minas Gerais, we kind of like have 2 days, full days in only seeing artworks throughout the days. And in the end of this, you kind of like, the way you perceive the world around you is kind of changed and influenced by those last 2 days that you experienced so intensely, intense. So for example, with one of the groups that I took, when we came back to the airport to come back to São Paulo, the Cofins airport, it was in, they were like fixing some area. So like there was this empty room with stairs, and then like one student said, "Miss, they're doing an installation here, look how interesting." And like, it was really interesting because it could be an art installation, because it was just like the perception of the way they were perceiving the world after all their experiences. So it happens a lot. Thank you.
So we're in charge of links to personal knowledge, and our question is, how is your perception of the world and your position in it affected by history?
History is just the story of everything that happened. So everything that has happened in the past has gotten you to where you are right now, right? Maybe a war sent your great-great-grandparents to another place, and then something else happened, and then you ended up here. That's your personal history. Everything that happened in the past leads to that. Even if it's, for example, something happening in Italy right now, somehow that could be affecting you right now.
To what extent are emotions problematic when talking and learning about historical events?
Yeah, if we talked about faith, we talked about your background. Those are two things that really do affect your emotions. So, for example, if you are Muslim or Jewish, you're talking about like the Arab-Israeli conflict that's been going on for a long, long time now. If you're on one of those sides, it might affect your emotions. You might decide, this, what I'm reading, cannot be true, based on my faith, based on what my parents or my grandparents have said or have told me. If you talk about, for example, a lot of historians will say like there are no actual documents, like reliable documents that state that Jesus existed. But they will not come out and actually say that in public because they know that they'll get a ton of backlash, and a lot of times they'll say like, Well, let's assume Jesus exists and just kind of go from there, right? That they don't want to play into people's emotions, they just want to give the facts.
So, assuming that all scientific experiments have uncertainties, how can we know truth in science?
So there are many uncertainties, but if you repeat the experiments many times and you have many trials, the uncertainties will be really insignificant. So this is when we are making science, we need many trials and repeat until we know that this uncertainty won't affect the final result.
To what extent are natural sciences influenced by the society and culture in which they are pursued?
Science can affect many aspects in society. One example that I thought is about some heliocentrism and geocentrism, because the beginning they thought that Earth was the center of everything, and then after some studies, they understand that it was the sun, the center of the universe, or our galaxy. And when the scientists were defending this, the church in that time, the church was really strong, and they tried to make everything, to make some problems to the scientists. So, and some scientists died because of these ideas, but after some time they understand that it was that point. So it might change all understanding, all our understanding, and it might happen today, because in the past we believed that the smallest unit, the smallest particle was the atom, but now we know that there are quarks and neutrons, leptons. So what if everything we know is wrong? So and then everything will change again. We don't know if what we know is what really is. So it might change every time.
We're in charge of language and concepts. And our first question is, to what extent is language important for the understanding of the human sciences?
Oosh, I think it's everything. Language is everything. From the point of view of psychology especially, language is what defines also what the object is going to be, and it helps us understand also within ourselves what are the involvements that we're having when we're looking at the objects of the science. For me, language is everything. You could not look at emotions, behavior, you could not look at humans and not think about how language is used to define all these concepts. So I think does that answer the question? That? Okay. I think it's everything.
So, back to us, and as you said before, in human sciences there are a lot of concepts in it, and I wanted to know that to what extent are these concepts affected by its surroundings?
I think if they're not, then we're not doing very good science. As I said, I think this is what made human and social sciences make peace with themselves. That they do look at concepts and they change all the time. And if they're not being checked all the time, then they become non-valued anymore and not good anymore. Does that answer?
Yes.
And our first question is, how can mathematician use the ways of knowing to acquire their knowledge?
So the most straightforward one is reason. I'm not sure how much I need to even explain that. It's just because mathematics, you're just reasoning through problems. But to do that first, it's our imagination. So, I've talked about the calendar a lot, but someone had to figure out what was going on with the rotation of Earth. They had to imagine, well, we can break this down into simpler things. So first, you have to have someone that dreams bigger than everyone else, and even can consider what the problem is to start with, or what issue should be addressed. And then through reason and intuition, be able to logically create a solution. There's languages on there too, and so another thing that had to be considered throughout the world is what symbolic notation should be used in mathematics. So mathematics is a language in itself. So no matter what, if you're here in Brazil or if you're in Bulgaria, the written mathematics doesn't change very much.
Which ways of thinking do you think is like the most important?
I'd say obviously the reasoning, but then imagination too. Because if you see the same problem over and over, it's easy, you just basically do the same process. But if this problem slightly changed, can you adapt your thinking to match the new circumstance?
Okay, so our next question is, to what extent can intuition be used in math?
So intuition and the ability to infer what's going to happen next. And part of that's people innately have ability to have intuition, and then that can also be developed by seeing a lot of problems. I'm not really sure, because it's a fundamental part of reasoning. But I think part of intuition also is a cultural construct, like what events in someone's life has led them to think a certain way. So someone that's never had done a written math problem isn't going to think about, I need to write this in a line by line, but they might be able to logically think through a sequence. So part of intuition is based on how we've been trained to think. So that's going to depend culturally. But I think now math's pretty much taught in a similar way, taught down right out what each step is.
Personal development, and our first question is, to what extent does memory of the past play a role in the religious knowledge system?
Well, if we break down into really basic ways of knowing, let's say I can know things by try and error. So I know that if I drop this, this will fall, because I can. Even if I try this time and time again, 10,000 times, this will fall. So this will fall. So scientific methods, right? I know because I can experiment and try again and again. But there's also, on the other hand, knowledge that's derived, that comes from other people or experiences or the past, historical knowledge, right? We can't duplicate that. We can't say whatever happened in World War II, we cannot try to do it again the same way, like an experimentation, right? So I think, in a way, religions, they follow this line. Whatever we believe or religions are teaching, we know them through this method, historically, right? So we can make experiments. Now, if we use our memory, imagine this, our parents are teaching us about this religion, and I learned this, and I'm going to pass this to my children. Now, there's only so much that I can pass through using my own memory, right? I can barely remember what I did yesterday, let alone 5, 10 years ago. So I think that's when scripture and tradition, saying Christianity come. They're vital components in the religious development, not only to continue religion, but also to preserve the basic knowledge within that religious tradition. So we need tradition, we need those the habits of practicing time and time again, and also scripture, whether it's written, documented. Because memory can be only favorable up until a certain point. You can forget easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we try to keep it so. We try to keep it as intact as possible. I'm saying this from a Catholic perspective.
How has the perception of people regarding religion changed?
Say that again.
There's something I have to think about. I mean, of course, I can say yes, it has changed. We can see in history, say, again, Christianity, when there was the Protestant Reformation, things started to break down. Yes, there's a lot of breaking down. Look in the history of religions, from hunter-gatherers through polytheism, henotheism, monotheism. It keeps breaking down. Yes, there's a lot of change. People see religion differently, but I don't know if there's one way to tackle this. See? I don't know. Do you want a cultural perspective, do you want a historical perspective, a social perspective?
Historical, because you're like historical development.
So yes. If we look at the scope of religion, the history of religion, it keeps breaking down, time after time. In the same way that one religion exists, the other disappears. And there's refinement also of religion. But I think that in the whole spectrum, you can't really examine religion as this isolated event or isolated phenomenon. And we have to take culture, we have to take social perspective, take the anthropological perspective, put them all together, and see why they keep changing. And you see that they change because societies also change, cultures also change. There's other influences from other religions. So they've been molding, but not isolated, and they go together.
Thank you.